In today's video, we're talking about carb refeeds.
By myself.
Hey guys, what's going on? This is Paul Ravella from ProPhysique.com. It's Monday morning and I'm happy to come to you with a new video to discuss what a carb refeed is, why we do them, what are the benefits, what are the drawbacks, and are they right for you? First things first, I have a bodybuilding show coming up and I'd be remiss if I did not mention it. Sign-ups have been going really well. Going to be my biggest show ever, and it's in Tampa, Florida every year. This is the 5th year. It's at the campus of USF, the University of South Florida, and so if you're interested, go to floridawcc.com, check it out. And if you're interested in some awesome trophies, this is from a company called Tailor Made Trophies. I don't know if you can catch the size of this thing, but yeah, it's like a Dorian Yates replica. I mean, there's some crazy detail in here as well. So yeah, I think you guys, I'm quite proud of these. So this is the bodybuilding trophy, the figure trophy, jacked figure chick. I also have a special one for men's physique and for bikini. So those are going to be the overall trophies, and we have some fantastic awards. Just a fantastic weekend planned. So if you're in the Tampa area on November 11th and you want to come to a great event, come check us out. Starts at 1 p.m. We're running straight through. No morning show, night show, blah, blah, blah. One big event. My man Ray Clark is going to be the guest poser. Him and his wife Janet do a fantastic job. Just motivating and inspiring. Ray is going to be competing in the OCB Yorton World Cup Championships in 2 weeks, so you know he's going to be bringing some great size and conditioning for the guest posing. I will also be at the Yorton Cup. I will have two bodybuilders there, and my friend Katie Ann's going to be competing, and I get to catch up with Doug Miller because it's in the Baltimore, Maryland, Virginia area. I don't know, it's somewhere in that area. So yeah, it's going to be a fun weekend, October 28th. But let's get into the topic of today's video and why I want to talk about carb refeeds. So for those that are familiar, Lauren Conlon and myself do a podcast called Redefine Healthy Radio. On the episode, we recently had Dr. Bill Campbell. So I'll link below to the iTunes for our podcast and you can listen. What's very cool is University of South Florida has been doing some research, and right now they're working on a research study on refeeds. And so Dr. Campbell actually asked me some thoughts of how I use them and my experience with them so that they could shape some of the research. So I'm very excited, and my former lab mate at USF, Danielle Aguilar, is going to be the grad student that's running the study design. So overall, it's just really cool to be involved in some of the research and stuff that's going on in the fitness community, because as you know, it's kind of new information, the way things have been done. And you know, my first program that I ever got from my first coach included a refeed day, and without really understanding why, I followed the plan. And as I got leaner, I found there was more and more benefits. So what is a carb refeed day? For anyone that diets and tries to lose body fat, carbs can be the biggest variable, right? Our protein and fats kind of stay relatively similar, right? The ratios stay similar. Now, when they come down, they'll come down a little bit, but fats and proteins stay pretty steady. Carbohydrates tend to be our biggest variable, right? So we can adjust our carbohydrates to see fat loss. Does that mean carbs are evil? No. It's just when we're trying to create a caloric deficit, we do it through manipulating carbohydrates for the most part. So what is a carb refeed? A carb refeed is where we basically take our daily carbohydrate intake and increase it for either a day, 2 days, a week, whatever it may be. My first plan was actually one refeed every 4 to 5 days. And what I found the benefit to be was it kind of got me motivated to stick to my plan, knowing that there was a refeed coming. So that's the first benefit, psychological. You know you can restrict if there's a goal at the end, just like a bodybuilding competition. A lot of times my clients will say, I'm having trouble sticking to my plan. How can I stay motivated? Well, I don't usually find that to be the case if there's a bodybuilding show or a wedding or something kind of driving that motivation for fat loss. It's when fat loss is kind of your plan, but other stuff comes up, right? It's harder to stay as motivated. So that's like one of the first things I realized was the psychological benefit of the refeed, staying on your diet, knowing you've got something coming up that's going to give you some relief from hunger and some of the other things that change. Another huge reason for refeeds, and we can debate what the most important reason is, but when you're depleting carbohydrates and you're training during the week, carbohydrates really fill out muscle. And so as you get leaner, there will be days after you've been low carb for a while you will look very flat. And for a bodybuilder or anyone who's a physique athlete, flat muscles can be very depressing. Looking at yourself and seeing that your muscle fullness and size is down can actually make you appear to be not as lean as you are, because when you think of muscle fullness pushing out against the skin, it actually makes you look leaner. It's very common for people to report after a refeed that they look leaner even though they weigh more. Well, this is because the scale is up from glycogen storing water in the muscle and expanding that muscle against the skin. Thus, you get a leaner look because you see more detail. So that's reason number 2, muscle fullness. And I'll tie in reason number 2 with muscle fullness, also performance, because now that you have more glycogen and muscle fullness, what does that allow us to do? Allows us to train better, allows us to recover quicker between sets. We've actually got some fuel in the muscle cells for creating the recovery and the progress. When you get really depleted and low on calories and your carbohydrates are low, your glycogen stores in your muscle are a little bit less, and so you can become fatigued a bit quicker. I also notice that the leverages of bodybuilders change. So a lot of people will often complain, I'm losing muscle because I'm not as strong as I was. Well, sometimes the strength loss is actually a leverage change, not muscle, right? So a lot of times people pressing will complain that they aren't as strong as they were and they feel like they're losing muscle, but sometimes it's not the case. Sometimes it's just the fact that you've got less leverages in your body for pressing, right? And so I feel like pressing tends to be the most common one that we see. So what is the other thing that refeeds are beneficial for? We're going to talk about 3: psychology, muscle glycogen, fullness, strength, recovery, whatever you want to call that. The third one is going to be hormonal support. And that's where Dr. Campbell and Danielle Aguilar are going to be aiming their research. They're going to be looking at hormone changes that happen over a single refeed, a double refeed, or people that do not refeed at all, okay? So Eric Helms and I spoke a couple years ago, and he showed me some research on consecutive day refeeds versus single day refeeds, and it was quite astonishing. So what I started doing was implementing multiple day refeeds, 2, sometimes 3, sometimes a full week. If you do a full week, we tend to call that a diet break, but however you want to call it, they're refeeds. We're raising up carbohydrates to a level that allows muscle glycogen to be restored, but not so high that we store adipose or body fat tissue. So what happens when the hormones are restricted from dieting and fat loss for so long? Well, we all know about hunger. We all know that you just get ravenously hungry for a while, right? And so when you refeed, you can help reset some of those hormones. And so that's one of the major benefits. One of the problems can be kickstarting the metabolic rate. A lot of people complain when they have a higher carb refeed day that they feel hungrier than they did the day before. Well, this is because hunger signaling can be associated with meal frequency and the amount of food that you eat. So you're actually kicking off some hunger signals. This is one thing that I experienced quite drastically when I got really close to stage lean. My refeed days were the most difficult days for me as far as sticking to my diet. I would find myself wanting to eat more and more, whereas the following days my appetite would start to suppress a bit. So there's still so much information that we need to learn about when it comes to hormones. So it's great that USF's going to be doing this research so we can kind of see what happens with leptin, right? What happens with the stuff that makes us hungrier when we do a carb refeed day. So those are the 3 big reasons that we do it, right? Psychological support, muscle fullness, and then hormonal support. Now, I don't fully understand all that goes into the body changes throughout the life cycle of refeeding and as our body composition change. I just know that in my experience with my athletes and myself over the last 5-6 years, what I have noticed is that multiple day refeeds for a very lean individual tend to be very beneficial, whereas a single day refeed at the beginning of a fat loss phase is sufficient, right? And I've learned how to use a diet break. Look for signs for people that might need a full week of reduced cardio, increased carbohydrates, and just allowing the body to kind of like de-stress, reduce some inflammation, actually continue to make progress. One of the things I notice with competitive bodybuilders is that the week after a competition, they'll often have such a good response by competing and then getting back on their plan. And it seems like to me, when I look at peak week, you're getting a reduction in cardio, you're getting an increase in carbohydrates, and a reduction in training intensity. And sometimes that's the Kickstarter for fat loss to continue. We will understand more about that as the time comes, because these are the questions we're starting to ask. Why is that the case? Why, when fat loss stalls, does it mean perhaps we need to do less and eat a little bit more? Anyway, guys, that's going to be it for me today. That's my thoughts on the carb refeed. Now, I'll give you a quick example of how I would handle a carb refeed day. Let's say I have an athlete on 150 grams of protein, 120 grams of carbs, and 50 grams of fat. That athlete, for a refeed day, I would bring their protein down as low as possible to the 1 gram per pound. So let's say I bring it down to 130 grams of protein. I would then raise the carbohydrates. For this person that's on 120, it would probably be about a 70, 80, 90% increase in carbohydrates. So if they're at 120, probably be somewhere around the 200 range, right? And for fats, I would bring fats down for that day to 35 to 40 grams of fat, just to allow some extra calories for the refeed. Now, sometimes that will change. Sometimes I'll actually increase fats when I increase carbohydrates, because fats do aid in digestion. There are so many variables to work with, so many things to discuss, but the basic idea is that you raise up carbohydrates, you bring down the other macronutrients to kind of allow for the calories to be higher for the carbohydrates, and then we see how you respond. If the weight goes up for a day or two and then you hit a new low, then we've done a great job. If the weight goes down after a refeed day, then we need to pay attention if perhaps you need to do more frequent refeeds or do consecutive day refeeds. And this is where the athlete, when they get leaner, I'll start to look at things like how they're responding to the refeeds to determine if we need more of them. That's gonna be it for me today, guys. It's Monday, I've got a lot to do. I've got a camp this weekend. My camp for Team Pro Physique is here this Thursday. It starts Thursday evening, and I can't wait for that. And then my bodybuilding show in 4 weeks. You just saw some of the trophies. So all good things. I hope you guys had a great weekend, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.